Daniel lived in a quiet suburb with his wife, Maria. The houses were neat, the lawns trimmed, and the streets always calm. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved at each other, and children rode bicycles in the evenings. For Daniel and Maria, it was a peaceful life, a sharp contrast to the years Daniel had spent serving in the military. He had been part of Delta Force, a unit known for discipline and precision, but he rarely spoke about it. To most of his neighbors, he was just a calm man who cared for his garden and enjoyed barbecues on weekends. Maria was warm and friendly. She liked talking to the neighbors and baking pies for community events. She often said the neighborhood felt safe, almost too safe, as if nothing bad could ever reach them here. Daniel would smile whenever she said that, though a small part of him always stayed alert. Habits from his old life never left him, even in a place as peaceful as this. One sunny morning, Maria noticed a group of men walking around the street. They wore dark uniforms that looked official but unfamiliar. On their vests was a logo that said HOA Security Division. Maria found that odd because the neighborhood did have a homeowners association, but she had never heard of them having their own security force. Usually, the HOA only sent letters about yard maintenance or organized holiday events. Maria mentioned it to Daniel when he returned from his morning run. There were some men in black uniforms checking houses, she said. They said they're with HOA security. Have you heard about this? Daniel frowned. No, the HOA doesn't have a security division. At least not one like that. Maybe it's new, Maria suggested, though she didn't sound convinced. Daniel thought about it for a moment. Strange. If the HOA wanted security, they would have told us. I'll keep an eye out. Later that day, Maria saw the same group again. They carried clipboards and knocked on doors, asking questions. Some neighbors signed papers they handed out. Others looked confused but still went along. Maria watched from her window as two of the men pointed at her house. A chill ran down her back, though she told herself not to worry. When Daniel came back from running errands, Maria told him what she saw. He listened carefully, his face serious. They're watching our house, he asked. Yes, Maria said. They stood across the street and kept pointing here. It didn't feel right. Daniel's instincts stirred. He had seen that kind of behavior before, people moving as if they were in control, trying to intimidate without saying much. To ordinary eyes, it might look harmless. To him, it looked staged, too precise, almost like a performance meant to gain trust quickly. That evening, the couple sat on their porch. Daniel drank coffee while Maria watered her plants. Across the street, the same men stood in a group, pretending to take notes. When Maria glanced at them, one of them gave her a smile that felt cold. Daniel, she whispered, why are they still here? I don't know, he said softly. But something tells me they're not who they say they are. The next morning, Maria was alone in the house while Daniel went to the hardware store. Around mid-morning, there was a knock on the door. Maria opened it slightly and found two of the men in black uniforms standing outside. Good morning, ma'am, one of them said. We're with the HOA Security Division. We need to speak with you about a violation. A violation? Maria asked. What violation? Step outside, and we'll explain, the man said firmly. Maria hesitated. The uniforms looked official, but something about their tone felt wrong. She remembered Daniel's warning the night before. Her instincts told her not to step outside, but the men were insistent. We need you to come with us for questioning, the second man said. Maria's heart began to race. She tightened her grip on the door handle and forced a steady voice. "My husband isn't home right now. You'll have to come back later." The men exchanged a glance. Their expressions hardened. One of them leaned closer. "Ma'am, this is serious. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to take action." Maria quickly shut the door and locked it. Her hands trembled as she backed away. She didn't know who these men were, but deep inside she knew one thing: they were not what they claimed to be. And at that very moment, Daniel was on his way home, unaware that trouble had already knocked on his door. Daniel returned from the hardware store with a box of tools in his hand. As he walked up the driveway, he noticed two men in black uniforms leaving his front porch. His eyes narrowed as they walked quickly to their vehicle, a dark SUV without any clear markings. Daniel opened the front door and found Maria standing near the hallway, her face pale. "Who were they?" he asked immediately. Maria's voice trembled as she spoke. "They said they were from HOA security. They told me there was some violation and that I needed to go with them for questioning." Daniel set the box down and stepped closer. "Did you go outside?" "No," Maria said, shaking her head. "I shut the door on them." Relief washed over Daniel, but his expression stayed sharp. "Good. You did the right thing." He moved to the window and peered outside. The SUV was still parked a few houses down, the men inside watching silently. Daniel could feel their eyes even from a distance. He didn't like it one bit. That evening, Daniel walked over to his neighbor, Mr. Harris, a friendly older man who had lived on the street for decades. "Have you seen those men in black uniforms?" Daniel asked. Mr. Harris sighed. "Yes, they came to my door yesterday. Said they were HOA cops. They asked me to sign a paper, something about confirming my membership. I didn't like their tone, but I signed just to make them leave." "Did you read the paper?" Daniel asked. Mr. Harris shook his head. "Small print. Hard for my eyes these days." "Why? Do you think they're trouble?" Daniel kept his calm voice. "I think they might be. Don't sign anything else if they come back. And don't go anywhere with them." That night, Maria couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made her nervous. She looked out the window and saw the same SUV parked under the streetlight. It didn't move for hours. Finally, around midnight, it drove away, but Maria's unease lingered. The next morning, Daniel made coffee and sat with Maria at the kitchen table. "They're pretending to be authority figures," he said. "But they have no badges, no proper IDs. Real officers don't behave like that. This is an act." Maria leaned forward. "Why our house, Daniel? Why are they so focused on us?" Daniel paused. His mind was already working through possibilities. In his years of service, he had seen groups use false authority to scare people. They would pressure, confuse, and then control. But why here, in a suburban neighborhood? That was the mystery. Later that day, Daniel decided to test them. He walked down the street casually, as if going for a stroll. The SUV was parked nearby again, the men inside pretending to read clipboards. Daniel slowed his steps and waved. "Morning," he said with a polite smile. One of the men stepped out. He was tall, with sunglasses covering his eyes. "Sir, we're with HOA security. We're conducting inspections." "Funny," Daniel replied calmly. "I've lived here a while, and I've never seen HOA security before. When did this start?" The man hesitated. "New program. Just rolled out this month. Daniel nodded slowly. And who authorized it? The man shifted uncomfortably. The board. Interesting, Daniel said, keeping his tone light. I know the board president. Maybe I'll ask him about it? The man gave a stiff smile. That won't be necessary. We're just here to make sure everything is in order. Daniel walked away, but his instincts told him more than their words. These men were not professionals. Their answers were too quick, too vague. They were hiding something. That evening, Daniel called the actual HOA office. The manager, Mrs. Collins, picked up the phone. HOA security, she repeated in confusion. We don't have a security division. We only hire a landscaping service and a pool maintenance company. That's it? Daniel thanked her and hung up, his suspicions confirmed. When he told Maria, she looked even more worried. So they're imposters, she whispered. Yes, Daniel said firmly. And imposters don't do this without a reason. They want something. And until I find out what, you're not stepping outside alone. Maria nodded, trusting him completely. Still, her eyes lingered on the window where the SUV headlights flashed once before turning off. The imposters weren't going away. For Daniel, the calm suburban life had just shifted. His instincts told him that what was coming next would not be simple. These men had chosen the wrong family to intimidate. 2 days passed, but the unease did not leave. Maria tried to distract herself with gardening, but her eyes kept drifting toward the street. The black SUV was always there. Sometimes it stayed for hours, other times it circled the neighborhood slowly. The presence of those men was like a shadow hanging over her peaceful home. Daniel, calm as ever, tried to reassure her. They're testing reactions, he explained. They're waiting for a moment when you're alone or when they think you'll panic. That's how imposters work. Maria wanted to believe him, but the fear kept growing. On the third morning, when Daniel had to attend a quick meeting across town, Maria stayed home. She was cleaning the living room when the knock came again. Firm, heavy, and deliberate. Her heart skipped. She peeked through the window and saw 3 men in black uniforms standing at the door. This time they looked more determined than before. She hesitated, but the knocking grew louder. "Ma'am, open the door," one of them called. "This is official HOA security business. You are required to cooperate." Maria's hands shook. She thought about calling Daniel, but the men's tone made her freeze. They sounded confident, almost rehearsed. She cracked the door slightly, leaving the chain lock on. "My husband isn't home," she said quickly. "You need to come back later." The leader of the group leaned forward. "That won't work, ma'am. There are complaints filed against you. We need you to come with us now." "Complaints?" Maria repeated. "What are you talking about?" "Violation of HOA rules," the man said sharply. "Unregistered changes to your property, unpaid dues, and suspicion of fraud. These are serious. Step outside." Maria's eyes widened. She knew these claims were false. Her payments were always on time, and she never changed anything without permission. Her voice trembled as she replied, "That's not true." The man's expression hardened. "If you resist, you'll make this harder. Step outside, or we'll take action." Maria quickly shut the door and locked it. But before she could step back, one of the men shoved the door hard. The chain held for a moment before snapping. The door swung open, and the men stepped inside. Maria gasped and stumbled back. "You can't do this," she cried. The leader raised a piece of paper and waved it. "This is an order from the HOA. You're under detention for violations." Maria could see it was nothing more than a typed sheet with a fake stamp. Still, the way the men carried themselves was meant to scare. Two of them grabbed her arms firmly. "Let go of me," Maria pleaded, struggling against their grip. Her fear grew as they tried to pull her toward the door. Just then, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the tension. Daniel had returned earlier than expected. He stepped out of his truck, holding a small bag from the store. His eyes immediately caught the scene inside through the open door. Maria's terrified face told him everything. The men froze for a second, realizing they had been caught mid-act. Daniel dropped the bag and stepped forward with calm control. His voice was low but carried authority. "Let her go." The men exchanged quick glances. One of them tried to sound confident. "Sir, this is official HOA business. Stay out of it." Daniel's eyes were cold and steady. "I already know the HOA has no security division. You're frauds. And if you don't release her right now, you'll regret it." The grip on Maria's arms loosened slightly, but the leader barked, "Take her. We'll handle him later." They tried to drag Maria again, but Daniel was already moving. His years of training had taught him precision in moments like this. He stepped inside, his presence filling the room with silent authority. His voice cut through the air once more. "Last chance. Let her go." Maria felt hope flood through her. She stopped struggling, trusting that Daniel knew exactly what to do. The imposters, however, were stubborn. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The room grew tense, silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. Daniel's stance made it clear he was not just an ordinary husband. He was ready, and he was dangerous to anyone who tried to harm his family. The imposters had played their game too far. They had crossed the line. And they were about to find out what kind of man they had just challenged. The room was heavy with silence. Daniel stood in the doorway, his eyes sharp and fixed on the men who still held Maria. His calm face made the imposters uneasy. They had expected resistance, but not the quiet, unshakable confidence of a man like him. "Release her," Daniel said again, his voice steady. The leader of the group tried to act in control. "Sir, you're interfering with an official HOA matter. Stand aside." Daniel stepped closer, his step slow and deliberate. "I already told you. The HOA has no security force. I spoke with the office myself. You are not officers, and you have no right to be here." The two men holding Maria shifted nervously. They could feel Maria's resistance, but more than that, they felt the weight of Daniel's presence. He wasn't shouting, yet every word carried authority. Maria looked at Daniel with relief. "Daniel, please," she whispered. Her voice fueled his determination. "You're going to let her go," he said firmly, "and then you're going to leave this house." The leader tried one last bluff. He waved the paper in his hand. "We have orders. If you resist, there will be consequences." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "The only consequence here is for you if you don't walk out that door." The men hesitated, then one of them pulled Maria's arm again, trying to drag her forward. That was enough for Daniel. In 2 quick steps, he was across the room. His movements were precise, fast, and controlled. He grabbed the man's wrist and twisted it away from Maria, forcing him to release his grip. The imposter cried out in surprise, stumbling back. The second man tried to tighten his hold, but Daniel stepped between him and Maria. His hand moved with practiced accuracy, pushing the man's arm aside and breaking his grip without hesitation. Maria quickly stepped back, free at last. "Stay behind me," Daniel told her firmly. She obeyed, her heart racing but filled with trust. The leader raised his hand as if to order the men forward, but the confidence in his face was already fading. Daniel stood tall, his body steady, his expression unshaken. He wasn't aggressive, but his stance left no doubt this was a man trained to handle threats. "You picked the wrong house," Daniel said coldly. For a long moment, no one moved. The impostors exchanged nervous looks. Their plan had been simple: pose as authority, scare the residents, and gain control. But they had underestimated Maria's strength to resist and Daniel's sharp instincts. Finally, the leader forced a fake smile. "We don't want trouble. We'll leave." "Not yet," Daniel said quickly. "You're going to answer questions first. Who sent you here? Why are you pretending to be HOA cops?" The men stayed quiet. The leader tried to edge toward the door, but Daniel's gaze froze him in place. "You think you can walk away after breaking into my home?" Daniel asked. "That's not how it works. Sit down." The impostors hesitated, but Daniel's voice carried the kind of weight that demanded obedience. Slowly, they moved toward the couch and sat, their confidence shrinking by the second. Maria stood behind Daniel, still shaken but feeling safer now. She looked at the men with disbelief. "Why us? What do you want from this neighborhood?" The leader avoided her eyes. "It's not about the neighborhood," he muttered. "We were told to target certain houses." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "By who?" The leader shook his head, staying silent. Daniel stepped closer, his calmness more intimidating than anger. "You'll speak. If not now, then when the real police arrive." The men stiffened. One of them whispered to the leader, "We should go." Daniel picked up his phone from the table and dialed. He spoke clearly. "This is Daniel Carter. I need law enforcement at my residence immediately. I have 3 individuals impersonating officers in custody." The impostors shifted nervously. They hadn't expected the situation to turn against them so quickly. Their plan was falling apart. Maria exhaled slowly, her fear easing as she watched Daniel handle everything with steady control. He was her shield, her protector, and in that moment, she understood once again why his past training made him different from everyone else in the neighborhood. The sound of sirens in the distance began to grow. The impostors looked at each other, panic rising in their eyes. Daniel's calm voice filled the room once more. "It's over. Stay seated until the police arrive. If you try anything, you'll regret it." Maria stood beside him now, no longer afraid. The danger wasn't gone yet, but with Daniel back home, she knew they had the upper hand. The sound of sirens grew louder as the black SUV waited nervously down the street. Daniel did not let the impostors see his relief. He kept his eyes fixed on them, noting every small movement. These men had tried to intimidate his wife and break into their home. They had made a mistake by underestimating him. The leader fidgeted on the couch, his hands trembling slightly. The other 2 men avoided eye contact with Daniel, realizing that the calm authority he carried was more dangerous than any shout or threat. Daniel took a slow step forward. "You've caused enough trouble," he said. "Tell me everything. Who sent you and why you targeted my house?" The leader hesitated. "We were hired, by someone who said it was urgent. They wanted specific houses checked. Yours was on the list." Checked for what? Daniel asked, his tone sharp but controlled. For compliance and verification, the leader replied, though the answer sounded weak even to his own ears. Daniel shook his head slightly. You don't have real orders. You're imposters, pretending to have authority. You broke into my home and threatened my wife. That is serious. Maria stood close, her hand on Daniel's shoulder. Why would anyone do this? She asked quietly. The men avoided her eyes. They were beginning to realize the gravity of their actions. Their plan had relied on fear and confusion, but now fear was on the other side. Daniel's eyes scanned the room. You're going to sit here quietly until the police arrive. If you try anything, it will only make matters worse for you. The leader swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Daniel nodded. He knew these men had no real power, but he also understood how dangerous it could be if they panicked. His training taught him to control situations without unnecessary force. Yet, the imposters needed to understand one thing clearly: they were no match for him. Outside, the sound of sirens grew nearer. The imposters glanced toward the window, panic flickering across their faces. Daniel noticed it immediately. They had expected easy compliance from Maria, and now everything had collapsed. Daniel spoke again, calm but firm. You've underestimated who lives here. I have no interest in hurting you, but I will not let you threaten my family. The leader swallowed nervously. We didn't know she would be alone. We just followed instructions. Instructions from who? Daniel pressed. The imposters exchanged nervous glances. One of them mumbled something about a name, but it was unclear. Daniel caught it. The name didn't matter as much as the fact that they were exposed. Their plan was failing completely. Daniel paced slowly, giving them time to reflect on the situation. You should have never come here. Now, every action you take will be recorded. The police will hear everything. The imposters shifted uncomfortably. The leader leaned forward slightly. We'll leave. Please, just don't call anyone else. Don't. Daniel raised a hand. Stay seated until the police arrive. I want to make sure you are held accountable. Do not move until the authorities get here. At that moment, the doorbell rang loudly, followed by the sound of uniformed officers entering the street. The imposters' faces turned pale. They realized that Daniel had not only protected his wife but had also called in real help before any real harm could occur. Two officers stepped into the home. Daniel explained the situation clearly and calmly, pointing to each of the three men. The imposters tried to speak, but the officers' presence and Daniel's calm authority left them no room to maneuver. They were quickly identified as imposters, and the officers started asking questions, taking statements from Daniel and Maria. Daniel stayed close to Maria, offering silent reassurance as the officers documented everything. The imposters realized they were now trapped, caught not by force, but by cleverness and quick thinking. Maria finally exhaled, relief flooding through her. She looked at Daniel with gratitude. You saved me, she whispered. Daniel smiled, but it was quiet, controlled. I'm just glad you're safe. That's all that matters. The imposters were taken outside by the officers. Their plan had failed completely, and now they faced real consequences. They had underestimated one thing: a man who would do whatever it took to protect his family. As the sirens faded and the SUV was towed away, Daniel closed the door behind the officers. The tension in the house slowly dissolved, replaced by relief and a sense of security. For the first time in days, Maria felt truly safe. Daniel looked at her and smiled. "We're home, and nothing is going to change that." Maria nodded, holding his hand tightly. Their peaceful life had been shaken, but together, they had overcome the threat. After the imposters were taken by the police, Daniel and Maria finally sat down in the living room. The tension that had built over the past few days still lingered, but the house felt safer. Daniel poured 2 cups of tea while Maria tried to steady her hands. "I can't believe this happened in our neighborhood," Maria said quietly. "Who would hire people like that?" Daniel shook his head. "That's what I want to find out. Someone went to a lot of trouble to scare us. And they didn't expect me to be home." The police had taken statements, collected the fake IDs, and checked the SUV. Daniel's calm explanation and detailed descriptions had made it easy for them to act. The officers promised to follow up and warned the neighbors to be careful. Later that afternoon, Daniel decided to speak with the actual HOA board. He wanted to understand how someone could claim authority in the neighborhood. He called Mrs. Collins, the HOA manager. "Mrs. Collins, this is Daniel Carter. Something strange happened today. 3 men pretending to be HOA security tried to take my wife," he explained. There was a pause on the line, then Mrs. Collins sighed. "Daniel, I've heard about reports in other neighborhoods too. Someone has been sending imposters to intimidate homeowners. They send fake orders and try to scare people into signing documents. We thought it was just rumors, but clearly it's real. You were lucky you handled it correctly." Daniel frowned. "Do you know who is behind this?" Mrs. Collins hesitated. "We're investigating. It seems to be a group trying to take advantage of homeowners. They claim to enforce HOA rules but are actually looking for houses with certain assets. Some think it's connected to illegal property sales, but nothing is confirmed yet. Please be careful." Daniel thanked her and hung up. He felt a mix of relief and determination. The danger was not personal, it was part of a larger plan, and that made him even more alert. Maria sat beside him. "So they weren't really after us?" she asked. "No," Daniel said. "They were looking for targets. We just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But we were ready." Daniel spent the rest of the day checking locks, security cameras, and even extra lighting around the house. Maria helped, and together they created a safe, organized environment. Their teamwork made them feel stronger. In the evening, the officers returned with a preliminary report. The imposters were part of a small organized group. Their goal had been to intimidate homeowners into signing false agreements so they could later profit from property deals. None of the homeowners had agreed to the false documents yet, thanks to Daniel's quick thinking. The police assured Daniel and Maria that the investigation was ongoing. They would identify the leaders of the group and prevent further attacks in the neighborhood. Maria finally relaxed, though Daniel could see she was still processing everything. "You were amazing," she said softly. "You protected me without even raising your voice. I don't know how to thank you." Daniel smiled, a small, calm smile. "It's what I'm supposed to do. It's what we do for family. You don't have to thank me. Just stay safe, and we'll handle the rest together." That night, they sat on the porch, watching the neighborhood settle into quiet. Children played nearby, and neighbors walked their dogs, unaware of the threat that had passed so close to their homes. Daniel felt proud that he had acted quickly and calmly, using his training to prevent harm without escalating the situation. Maria leaned on his shoulder. "I feel like we can face anything together," she whispered. Daniel nodded. We can. And if anyone ever tries something like this again, we'll be ready. We know what to do. For the first time in days, they felt truly safe. The imposters had been exposed, their plan revealed, and the neighborhood reminded that courage and calm thinking could overcome even the most unexpected threats. The couple stayed outside a little longer, sipping their tea, enjoying the gentle evening breeze. It was a moment of peace, a victory for careful planning and trust. They knew life might bring challenges again, but they also knew that together, they could handle anything that came their way. The morning after the confrontation, the neighborhood was unusually quiet. Daniel and Maria had slept late, the tension finally giving way to a deep, calm exhaustion. Outside, the sun reflected off freshly cleaned lawns and tidy houses, giving the street a sense of peace that had been missing for days. Daniel brewed coffee while Maria prepared breakfast. They spoke little, each lost in their thoughts, but there was a shared understanding. They had faced danger together and come through stronger. By mid-morning, 2 police officers returned to their house. They brought official documents confirming that the imposters had been detained for impersonating officials and attempting to intimidate residents. Daniel read through the papers carefully, noting the charges and the progress of the investigation. The officers explained that the group had been part of a larger scheme, targeting several neighborhoods, but thanks to Daniel's swift actions, the local authorities were now able to prevent further incidents. You handled this very well, Mr. Carter, one officer said. Your quick thinking and calm approach probably prevented serious problems for your wife and the neighborhood. We hope this serves as a warning to others who might consider such actions. Daniel nodded, thanking them, but his mind was already considering next steps. Is there any advice for the neighborhood? He asked. Keep communication open, the officer replied. Neighbors watching out for each other is the best defense. And always verify anyone who claims authority. After the officers left, Daniel and Maria stepped outside onto their porch. The street was beginning to return to its normal rhythm. Children rode bicycles, neighbors chatted casually, and the faint hum of cars passing by created a comforting sense of normalcy. We're lucky, Maria said softly. Not everyone would have stayed calm the way you did. Daniel smiled, a quiet, humble smile. We stayed calm because we trusted each other. That's what matters most. We prepared, and we stayed alert. That's the difference. Soon, neighbors started emerging from their homes, curious about the events that had unfolded. Mr. Harris came over, carrying a small basket of pastries. I heard what happened, he said. I just wanted to say thank you. You kept Maria safe and protected all of us by showing these imposters don't belong here. Other neighbors joined, sharing their relief that no one had been harmed. Daniel explained briefly what had happened and emphasized the importance of vigilance and communication. The community listened intently, realizing that even in a quiet neighborhood, threats could appear unexpectedly. By midday, the HOA board had organized a small meeting at Daniel and Maria's house. Mrs. Collins and several board members were present. They thanked Daniel for his courage and quick thinking, noting that his actions had inspired confidence in the neighborhood. Plans were discussed to improve security measures, establish clear verification for any authority, and ensure that no one else would be deceived in the future. Maria stood beside Daniel, her hand resting on his arm. She felt pride and gratitude. Not only had they protected themselves, but they had also helped their neighbors and strengthened the sense of community. In the late afternoon, Daniel and Maria finally took a quiet walk around their block. The sun was warm, and the neighborhood seemed peaceful once more. Children laughed in the distance, neighbors waved, and the black SUV that had caused so much fear was gone for good. "We did it," Maria said, smiling. "We faced something scary, and now it's behind us." Daniel nodded. "Yes. But we also learned something important. Trust, preparation, and staying calm make all the difference. And when people work together, nothing can intimidate them for long." As the evening settled, the couple returned home. They closed the door behind them and looked at each other, feeling a deep sense of relief and satisfaction. The imposters had been exposed, the neighborhood was safe, and their lives had returned to peace. Daniel poured 2 glasses of water, and they sat on the porch once again. The cool breeze brushed past them as they watched the sun slowly disappear behind the houses. For the first time in many days, they felt completely safe and truly at home. "Whatever comes next," Daniel said quietly, "we'll face it together." Maria smiled, squeezing his hand. Always together. The neighborhood, once threatened, had regained its calm. And Daniel and Maria knew that courage, quick thinking, and unity had turned a dangerous moment into a lasting lesson for their community. Peace had returned, stronger than ever, and the couple could finally enjoy the quiet life they had always cherished.